for a long time. And Farmer John says, well, I don't have any good clothes. I just got my farming gear. I don't want to go to church in my farming gear. And the Baptist minister says, oh, we can remedy that. And the next Wednesday, the Baptist minister brought the farmer a lovely outfit. But come Sunday, Farmer John is not in church. And the Baptist minister says, Farmer John, I am astounded you were not in church last Sunday. And Farmer John says, those clothes you gave me were so nice, I thought I could go to the Episcopal Church.
And the 14th Amendment? Let's see if we can find that one, folks. 21st, 22nd. All persons, Section 1, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without the due process of law, nor deny to any person within the jurisdiction the equal protection of the law. No matter who you are, how poor you are, or whatever you are, you get the equal protection of the law. Courts aren't there for big companies. Section 2. Now Section 3, in Section 2 I don't think you need right away, but Section 3 you do. That any judge who violates his oath, and his oath is to support the Constitution of the United States, any judge who violates that is not to be paid. The state doesn't owe him any money as a state judge. The federal government doesn't owe him any money as a federal judge. And Section 4 is, nor does the state owe them any money as for pension, or the federal government owe them any money for pension. How is that? We have covered many, many, many rights of yours under the Constitution of the United States. Read part of the Constitution of the United States every day. Well, folks, I think that's a very good microphone. It picks up the tick-tock of the clock. It's a very good little microphone. Now, this is not the wireless microphone. I want to tell you about Rick Moon. Rick Moon is in a very sad family court situation, as millions are. What a disgrace family court is. What a terrible thing to put on a person. Don't get married unless you're getting married for life. Don't have children unless you're going to stay married for life. You go into family court, it is Neanderthal. It is brutal. Well, for the millions and millions and millions who are in there, and for the hundreds who have talked to me about it, Rick Moon is another victim. And I told him about my experiences in court, and from that he learned many things. He learned many rights. He learned much law, as I told him about my experiences in court. And he wrote down things. And from the beginning, he said he wanted my show on TV in Pittsfield and that he would stand up and be the local signer. There really is no basis for that. There is no legal statutory basis for that. But that is something that these dirty people, I think Natoa, and some adventurous lawyers, preyed upon municipalities who got the privilege to have public access, didn't know the first thing to do about it, and asked for a consultant, and these consultants were all wrong. They made up rules that really have no legal basis and are anti-constitutional. But anyway, he just said that he would be the local signer for a chat with Glendora in Pittsfield, Massachusetts. Then every day I would listen to him and listen to him and listen to him and commiserate with him. But every day he would keep putting codicils on this. Well, I'm going to change it this way. Well, I'm going to do it that way. No, I'm going to do this. No, I'm going to do it. And I don't mind this, and I think your shows are terrific, but then there's this that shouldn't have been in there. And he just gradually deteriorated. And I felt so badly for him as to the family court in Troy, New York. I asked him, do you have anybody to go to court with you? Never go to court alone. Never. Always take a witness. Always. So I volunteered to go with him on October 26th and spend most of the day seeing what happened in court, watching it, saying nothing, then listening to him afterwards and consoling him. And I was ready, willing to do that. And then he went down to his appointment with Norman Schaffer, and Norman Schaffer says, oh, the editing machines are all busy, call me up Wednesday for an appointment. He didn't say come in Wednesday and make good for it, just call me up and make an appointment to put this thing off and off and off. And then I get a call from Rick Moon on a recorder with no explanation, with no apology. I won't need you to go to Troy Family Court with me, and I will not be signing for your program in Pittsfield. No explanation, no apology, no consolation. He's another Dr. Rebecca Carley. People will do things like that. You will give them everything you have. You give them everything you have. You give them your time, you give them your experience, you give them your vigor, you'll even give them money, and that's what they'll do to you. These are the unclean spirits. Please, all unclean spirits, come.
General store, and Charlie Barrows ran it and owned it, and his mother, Iva Barrows, lived in a very rich and fancy house next to the store property, and she was well connected because Lewis Barrows was the governor of Maine at one time. And Aunt Bertha, who was my mother's sister, my mother was Edna Leathers Folsom, and this was Bertha Leathers Gray. She was married to Harold Gray, and she was the oldest of the 5 in the Leathers family.
Ralph Gray.
And she rented the apartment over the Barrows store. And the Barrows store was the archetype of the general store, the country store. Sold everything, flour, grain,
Candy.
Candy. And there was a set of buildings behind the store, open carriage houses, about 6 or 7 stalls. And in one of them was one of those great big old bicycles with a great big rear wheel and a little tiny front wheel. I don't know how anybody ever got up on one of those and rode it. One of the original bicycles. Also, there was an abandoned post office there, and it still had the drawers, and there were still things in the drawers, and there were receipts, but nobody was running it for many years. And I believe Charlie Barrows lived in the house opposite Aunt Iva's. The 3 buildings were there together, the Barrows store and Aunt Iva's which is very well appointed. And then Charlie Barrow's the other store, the other house, white houses, country houses, big. And so the post office had the slots. There were a lot of slots. There were mailboxes, things like that. It was the decadent effects of an old post office. And on the way to Hamden Corners, we would pass the pea factory where the pea shells were emptied and canned, and then the pea shells were put out in a pile to rot, and the odor was, so ugly. It was so malodorous, and how I used to dread going by the pea factory. Gordon was 4 years older than I was.
Gordon.
Ronald Folsom Jr., my brother, was 4 years older than Gordon. And Helene, Bertha Helene, actually, Folsom, was 4 years older than Ralph. She remained in Presque Isle and finished the normal school and became a teacher and was teaching in within small town, Mars Hills, for instance. Well, it was so impoverished. It was so impoverished. I believe she taught in Presque Isle High School. And that's where she met Glenn Chamberlain. And she and Roger Erskine, Glenn, had a falling out. And during that time, Helene went with Glenn Chamberlain, who was a science teacher at the Presque Isle High School. And when Helene came for Christmas vacation down to Lincoln, she brought a 5-pound box of candy that Glenn Chamberlain had given her to give to me. No, I guess Glenn brought it himself, and he came down. And I liked him better than Roger because of that 5-pound box of candy. And Ralph Arnold Folsom Jr., my brother, moved out of Maine, Lincoln, Maine, and came to Bangor. On 376 Ohio Street, I believe we moved to 1903rd Street, which was off of Union Street. The YWCA was on Union Street.
They were nice to us. Children.
And that was a great big house also, with a great big barn. Between the house and the barn there had been constructed a walkway closed in from the second floor over to the second floor of the barn, and there was a bedroom there. And you passed another bedroom too. The bedroom, 2 bedrooms, the second one was in the barn, and it had bunk beds, and the other bedroom was on the hallway between, the long hallway between the house and the barn. And it had a ramp that went up to the barn, and I guess the barn was being used as a garage. And my father had a Model T. And he fixed it all up, and it was nice. As you entered the house, there was a library on the right. There was a parlor on the left. Then you came into the dining room that had a butler's pantry, and there was a small room off of the dining room. And then you came into the kitchen. And my mother rented rooms there. And had income, and I believe my father was still working as a barber at the Bangor House. I remember doing fractions in 5th grade. I remember. No. Yes. And fractions in 6th grade at the Cole Street School, which was some building of the Cole estate. And it was 6th grade, and I remember doing push, pull, push, pull, push, pull, push, pull, the Palmer method of writing and the circles. I remember Lincoln's birthday. We drew a picture and colored it. And Washington's birthday. There was no such thing as President's Day. I remember at 6th grade that I made a resolution not to write, but to print. And that's been true all of these years. It was a little building in the middle of a huge estate. There wasn't anything around it much, except, of course, the big house. Lois Wiegand didn't live far from the Cole estate. And her father was a pressman for the Bangor Daily News, so he worked all night because it was morning paper, and he slept all day. I have to insert that the Garland people, who were very, very rich, had 2 daughters and a son. And Jeannie Garland was my age, and she was in some of my classes. And her sister, who was older, and Gordon, had some sort of teenage romantic interest. The son, Joseph, was very pampered, and they lived in a great, great big house that had great big white pillars. Their grandmother lived next door, and she was the one who had all the money. She was a widow. I remember in the summertime, the Garlands, Ginny, and the sister gathered up all of us kids to go into the living room, and they had a radio, great big radio, and it was at noontime Saturday, and we listened to Let's Pretend. And they had an attic playroom for the children, which was spoke of money everywhere, and we would go up there to play sometimes when they would let us in the house. And they had a servant. That was during, that was the summer between 5th grade and 6th grade. And I had my roller skates. Iron, steel roller skates. They were so noisy and so rough on the sidewalk. Lois Wiegand used to make me laugh. She would pretend that she was a teacher. And she just made me laugh and laugh and laugh when we played after school. On 19 3rd Street, I remember trying to learn how to ride a bicycle, but I kept falling down and kept running. I ran into a man on the sidewalk.
Gordon was a friend of Donnie Severance, and Donnie's father was a fireman, a Bangor City fireman. And I believe he lived over around 5th Street. At 1903rd Street we had a Victrola. You would wind it up and it played records. And one was something about the old apple tree. Old apple tree in the orchard lives in my memory. We were happy something. Dun 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 dun, the old apple tree in the orchard. I remember on the radio, my mother was over at the neighborhood store, and this one was a Finest, I believe, over in the corner of Union Street and 3rd Street. And it was only about 4 or 5 houses from our house. And on the radio, I heard them sing, I come to the garden alone while the dew is still on the roses. And I ran over to the store as fast as I could, and I said, Mom, they're playing that song that you like on the radio. And it, to my mother, of course, it was, by the time she got to the house, it would be gone. They used to sell, they had a sale for 2 rolls of Necco wafers for 5 cents. 2 rolls of Necco wafers for 5 cents. And Necco wafers were pink and yellow and chocolate brown and black and green and violet. And they were spicy flavors like sarsaparilla and clove and cinnamon. Now, where were we, folks? I'm recording the chronology on September 4th, 8 p.m. in the sanctuary with God. It is your will, God, that this task be done. Okay. There's a little confusion here because we lived in so many places in Bangor. But anyway, in the fall of 1939, I am 11 years old, and I am in 6th grade, and I'm going to the Cole School. It seems that I remember living at 26 or something Smith Street, and Eva and Roy Hudson lived right across the street, and they were sweet people. And and Smith Street was a U, it was a cul-de-sac, Upper Smith Street and Lower Smith Street, and it went, and it came off of... Roy Hudson, later, you'll find out, when I was in junior high school, was the custodian of the 5th Street Junior High School. And it went right up against woods and right up against cliffs that were unlivable. Nobody could have a house there. Right in the city of Bangor. And okay, that's only side one. Hello, Princess. I'm glad you're still alive. I remember going to some kind of a missionary church on the hill as you went into Bangor. I think that street was Union Street. I don't think you're right. And
attendance, and I worked hard to get all the other pretty pins. And I had 4 teddy bears. No, I had lost Billy on the road up in Aroostook County somewhere. And I had Bobby, who was a brown teddy bear, and Nancy, who was a blonde teddy bear, and Pee-wee. Anyway, down in those woods, I tried to build a house with sticks and no nails, just a little log house. I remember a Hudson Terraplane there. I remember a brand new Buick there. And what year is this? 1939. I remember Lois Wiggin from there. Smith Street, as I said, went off of Ohio Street about, 10 blocks above 373 Ohio, the first place that we lived. I remember there were some kids there that I played with, and there was a sand pit there, again, where we built roads and houses and garages and driveways. There was a rich boy and a smart boy who lived in a big house, and he told a ghost story. I remember collecting tinfoil and making a ball, and you would get the tinfoil out of the gutter from the cigarette packs. I remember buying a bow and arrow for $1. I remember playing up at the standpike across the street.
That was on an acclivity.
And Bobby Leathers, Carl's and Louise's son, lived on 14th Street. Carl was an adopted brother of Edna and Bertha. I remember going to Lester Leathers and Lillian. And Lillian was well positioned, and Lester was an engineer at Kraft Chocolates in Boston, and they had Lillian's summer home in Herman.
Outside of Bangor.
And Leon had a home, Leon and Cecil had a home, 2 or 3 lots across the road. It's on the same side of Route 2 in Herman Corners.
I think it's 2A.
And Leon was a school bus driver, among many other things. And Leon had 2 sons, Ralph and Wilford. And Ralph was married to Madeline. And Madeline and Ralph lived in Bangor, and Madeline worked for the Bangor city government. And there was a store in between Lester's and Lillian and Leon and Cecil. And that store was run by Claude Kimball. And maybe Claude Kimball was the sheriff. And I think Cecil was Claude's sister. and Lester had a son, Harry, who was extremely personable and had a great personality. And in the summertime, Lester came and worked in a little place up on the second floor that joined the house and the barn. They had a great big barn. So that was the Leathers family. Bertha, the oldest, or was Leon the oldest? And Lester and Edna, and adopted Carl. And that, again, as I say, was Route 2 coming into Bangor from the south and the west. How we doing, recorder? We're doing fine. Now, if you went up that road, and I think it was a dirt road, between Lillian and Lester and Leon and Cecil. I guess that was Herman Corners. You would find Emery and Ada. And they were country people by looks and by manner, yet Emery was a teacher, and Herman and Ada was rather erudite. I believe they had a daughter named Ada, and I think that was Herman Corners. The other place I was describing was just Herman.
Then there was Levant.
Right there, near their house, was the cemetery where Lester Carl Leathers and John Howard Leathers were buried. The mother and father of Leon, etc. They all called my mother Edna. And somebody, I think it was her father, called her Nettie. And all of us children, not all of us, I guess, Ralph Arnold Folsom Jr., my brother, and Gordon Howard Folsom Jr., and Glendora Vesta Folsom called our mother Nettie. Very seldom did we call her Mom. I remember when John Leathers died, and for some reason Bertha was way up in the woods. Way up in the woods. It was a cabin almost smothered by woods. And John Leathers' body was there, and I remember they kept turning the body. They must have been waiting for a funeral. Also there near Herman was Northern Maine Junction. It was a junction of railroads. The Maine Central, the Bangor Aroostook, and the Boston and Maine, I think, railroads, and Guskalon worked there. That's a railroad junction. do believe Bangor had a... Did Bangor have a railroad station, or did they use Northern Main Junction? We had trolley cars in Bangor, and you would buy a pass. I think the pass was for a week. Some weeks the pass was red, some weeks it was green, some weeks it was yellow, some weeks it was blue. And you could get on the railroad and you could ride all over the city. I know it went up Ohio Street. It went up Ohio Street as far as 14th Street. It must have gone to Hamden, or at least down that Hamden Street. I never mentioned Brewer. Brewer was across the Penobscot River. It was a city.
Okay, folks. Daylight is leaving us. This is the first day of standard time.